I woke up on my wedding night to silence that felt wrong. Not the peaceful kind you expect after a long day full of music and laughter, but a hollow, watchful quiet that made my skin prickle before my mind fully caught up. The ceiling above me came into focus first. Dark wooden beams, carved and elegant, the kind you pay extra for because they look timeless in photos. For a moment, I just lay there, breathing, waiting for the warmth beside me. It wasn't there. The right side of the bed was cold. Untouched. Empty. I pushed myself up on my elbows, my heart already beginning to race. The events of the evening replayed in fragments. The garden lights glowing like stars. The applause. Julian kissing my forehead and whispering, "You look exhausted, Ava. Go upstairs. I'll be right behind you once I help my mom settle in." His hand guiding me toward the staircase. The certainty in his voice. Julian was not a forgetful man. He was precise. Planned. The kind of man who triple-checked timelines and reminded vendors of schedules they already knew by heart. Our wedding night was part of that plan. He wouldn't just vanish. I swung my legs off the bed. The stone floor was shockingly cold against my bare feet, snapping me fully awake. I slipped on the satin robe draped over a chair, tying it loosely as I stood. "He probably got pulled into something," I murmured, trying to calm myself. A lingering conversation. One last drink with family. Something harmless. Still, unease settled heavy in my chest. I stepped into the hallway. The air outside the suite was cooler, carrying the faint scent of old wood polish and wilting flowers from the arrangements downstairs. The estate was quiet in that deep, layered way only large houses get when everyone is asleep at once. I took a few steps forward, then paused. I heard it. Be heard. I held my breath, listening. Silence followed. I shook my head. Old house, I told myself. Pipes. Echoes. Then it came again. Longer this time. A low, breathy sound, followed by a hushed laugh and the dull thump of something hitting a wall. My stomach dropped. That wasn't the house. Every instinct in my body went alert as my gaze traveled down the hallway. The sound was coming from the west wing. The guest rooms assigned to Julian's family. My pulse thudded in my ears as I remembered the layout I'd memorized during planning. The last room at the end of the hall. His mother's room. Marilyn had excused herself early, complaining of a headache and promising she was heading into town for medication. I'd watched her disappear hours ago. That room was supposed to be empty. Another sound drifted out, unmistakable now. A woman's whisper, breathless and urgent. "Julian, slow down." My knees nearly buckled. My husband's name echoed down the hallway, and, before my mind could stop them, my feet began to move. The hallway felt longer than it had any right to be. Each step I took sent a dull thud through the polished floor, the sound echoing too loudly in the quiet. The old oil portraits lining the walls seemed to watch me as I passed, unfamiliar faces frozen in judgment. My robe brushed against my legs with a soft whisper that sounded obscene in the stillness. I moved slowly, not because I wanted to, but because my body felt detached from my mind, like I was wading through water. Another sound slipped through the air. A muffled laugh. Breathless. Intimate. I stopped, my hand flying out to steady myself against the wall. My fingers pressed into the cool plaster, grounding me just enough to keep me upright. "You're tired," I whispered under my breath. "You're hearing things." Weddings were exhausting. Emotions ran high. Old houses made strange noises. I clung to every excuse like a lifeline. Then a man's voice answered, low and unmistakable. "Relax. Everyone's asleep." Julian. My chest tightened so sharply it stole the air from my lungs. I had kissed that voice only hours ago. Trusted it. Promised my life to it. Now it was drifting through the dark hallway, coming from somewhere it had no business being. I moved again, faster this time, dread pulling me forward. The light grew warmer near the end of the corridor, spilling faintly from beneath a closed door. Dust floated in that thin strip of glow, turning the air into something unreal, like a scene staged for a nightmare. I recognized the door. The brass number. The slight scuff near the baseboard. Marilyn's room. The moans were clearer now. No longer mistaken for shadows or echoes. I could hear the soft creak of bed springs, the rhythm unmistakable, the intimacy undeniable. A woman murmured something I couldn't fully catch, her voice breathy, familiar in a way that made my skin crawl. Julian chuckled softly. The sound turned my stomach. I stood frozen inches from the door, my heart pounding so violently I was sure it could be heard on the other side. A part of me screamed to turn around, to go back to the bridal suite, to climb into the cold bed and let this become a terrible dream I'd wake from in the morning. But another part of me, sharper and crueler, leaned in. Someone might hear, the woman whispered. They won't, Julian replied. They never do. Something inside me cracked. Never do. My hand trembled as it lifted toward the doorknob. The brass felt icy beneath my fingers, grounding and unbearable all at once. I pressed my ear against the wood instead, my breath shallow, my body rigid. What I heard next stripped away every last illusion I had left. And in that moment, standing barefoot in a hallway that no longer felt like mine, I understood one terrible truth. Whatever was happening behind this door didn't start tonight. The door was warm beneath my palm. That detail lodged itself in my mind for no logical reason, as if my brain needed something small and tangible to focus on instead of the truth pressing in from every direction. Warm wood. Warm room. Warm bodies. My throat tightened as I leaned closer, my ear flat against the panel, my breath barely moving. Inside, the sounds sharpened. The bed creaked in a slow, deliberate rhythm. Sheets rustled. A woman gasped softly, then laughed under her breath, the sound intimate and unguarded. I recognized that laugh before my mind would allow it. I had heard it across dinner tables, in dressing rooms, during late-night phone calls that stretched until sunrise. No, she whispered, breath hitching. You're going to mess up my hair. Julian murmured something low and teasing. I couldn't make out the words, but I knew the tone. I had fallen in love with that voice. Trusted it to hold my fears, my future, my name. A wave of nausea rolled through me. We've got to be up early, the woman added, giggling softly. I'm literally standing next to her all day tomorrow. Julian chuckled. You worry too much. There it was. The confirmation my body already knew, but my heart had been fighting to deny. Besides, he continued, his voice dropping. This is our moment. Our. My knees nearly gave out. I pressed my shoulder against the wall, swallowing hard, my chest burning as if I'd been running instead of standing still. The hallway seemed to tilt, the portraits blurring at the edges of my vision. Then she said my name. Ava won't even notice, the woman whispered. She trusts us. The voice finally fully revealed itself. Lena. My maid of honor. My best friend. The woman who had helped me button my dress, fixed my veil, held my hands while I cried happy tears that morning. The same woman who had toasted our love hours earlier, her voice shaking with emotion as she promised she'd always protect me. I clamped a hand over my mouth to smother the sound that tried to escape my throat. A broken noise, half sob, half scream. Tears spilled down my face unchecked, blurring the strip of light beneath the door into a smear of gold. Behind that door, my husband shifted, the mattress creaking louder now. We'll talk to her later, he said. After the honeymoon. Once things calm down. Promise? Lena asked quietly. There was a pause. Just long enough to hurt. I promise, Julian said. She's strong. She'll get through it. Strong. As if strength were permission. As if survival were consent. Footsteps sounded inside the room. Bare feet against wood. Moving closer. The handle rattled slightly. Panic jolted through me. I stumbled backward, my heart slamming against my ribs as I flattened myself against the opposite wall, the cold stone seeping through my robe. The latch clicked. The door began to open. And I knew, with brutal clarity, that nothing in my life would ever be the same again. Light spilled into the hallway as the door swung open. For half a second, Julian didn't see me. He stood there bare-chested, his dress pants hanging low on his hips, belt undone, hair slightly mussed. The sight was so intimate, so wrong, that my stomach twisted violently. Then his eyes adjusted to the dim hall. They landed on me. The color drained from his face. Ava, he said hoarsely, as if I were the one who didn't belong there. Behind him, the room shifted. I saw movement, a flash of brown skin and familiar curls as Lena yanked the sheets up to her chest. Her eyes were wide, lips parted, her expression caught somewhere between terror and shame. The silence stretched, thick and suffocating. My voice surprised me when it finally came. It was quiet, steady, almost calm. "Don't stop on my account," I said. I wouldn't want to interrupt. Julian took a step toward me, instinctively blocking the doorway with his body. "Baby, listen," he began quickly. "This isn't in your mother's room?" I asked. "In the middle of the night? After you told me you'd be right behind me?" He opened his mouth, closed it. His gaze dropped to the floor like a child caught stealing. Behind him, Lena slid out of bed, the sheet wrapped tightly around her. "Ava, I can explain," she whispered, tears spilling freely now. "Please. I never meant for you to find out like this." Find out. As if this had been something quietly happening for a while. As if discovery was the real betrayal. I laughed once, a short, broken sound that echoed down the hallway. "How long?" I asked, my eyes never leaving Julian's face. Neither of them answered. That was answer enough. "I heard you," I continued, my chest burning with every word. "Everything. The promises. The plans. The part where you decided I was strong enough to survive this." Julian's shoulders sagged. "We were confused," he muttered. "It wasn't supposed to go this far." "But it did," I said. "And you let it. Both of you." Something shifted inside me then. The anger, the heartbreak, the disbelief didn't disappear, but they rearranged themselves into something colder. Sharper. Clear. "I'm not screaming," I said. "I'm not throwing things. I'm not begging for explanations." I took a step back, creating space between us. "You made your choice. Congratulations." Julian looked at me like I'd slapped him. "Ava, please." "You have 5 minutes," I said, cutting him off. 5 minutes to get dressed and get out of this room. Because after that, this stops being your secret and starts being my truth. I turned away before either of them could respond. As I walked back down the hallway toward the bridal suite, my bare feet numb against the floor, one thought repeated over and over in my mind. This marriage was over. And somehow, that certainty hurt less than pretending it wasn't. If you had asked me the day before my wedding who I trusted most in this world, I would have answered without hesitation. Julian. And Lena. The irony of that truth still tastes bitter. Lena and I didn't meet as adults. We didn't bond over brunch or work stress or bad dating stories. We grew up together. 8 years old, sitting side by side in the back row of our church's children's choir, whispering too loud and getting shushed every 5 minutes. She had the louder laugh. I had the quieter courage. Somehow, it worked. Our friendship formed before we knew what betrayal looked like. We shared everything growing up. Lip gloss in middle school, secrets scribbled into notebooks, dreams we whispered late at night about getting out of our small town and building something bigger than what we'd been handed. When my first real boyfriend broke my heart in college, it was Lena who held my hair back while I cried on the bathroom floor, promising me that one day a man would love me the way I deserved. "You won't settle," she told me fiercely. Not ever. I believed her. When my parents hit a rough patch, I slept on her couch. When her mom got sick, I drove her to appointments. Our lives braided together so tightly that people stopped referring to us separately. It was always Ava and Lena. A unit. A constant. So when I met Julian years later at a professional mixer in the city, she was the first person I called. I told her everything. How confident he seemed. How intentional. How he asked questions and actually listened to the answers. She squealed through the phone, demanding details, already deciding she liked him before she ever met him. When Julian started coming around more, it felt natural that Lena became part of our orbit. Dinners turned into group meals. Movie nights turned into all 3 of us squeezed onto the couch, laughing over terrible reality shows. I told myself this was what healthy relationships looked like. My best friend and my partner getting along. There were moments I brushed off without much thought. The way she finished his sentences. How they shared inside jokes I didn't remember being present for. The way she'd fix his collar or straighten his tie without asking. None of it screamed danger. It felt familiar, comfortable, safe. When Julian proposed, there was never a question about my maid of honor. Lena cried harder than anyone. She hugged me like she was afraid I might disappear, whispering that she was so proud of me, that I deserved happiness. Planning the wedding felt like a team effort. Lena handled details when I was overwhelmed. Julian trusted her completely. I trusted both of them. What I didn't realize then was that trust, once misplaced, doesn't crack loudly. It breaks quietly, one moment at a time. I met Julian at a networking event I almost didn't attend. It was one of those evenings where everyone wore their best professional smile and pretended they weren't there to be seen. I had driven in after a long workday, exhausted and doubting myself, already planning my excuse to leave early. My hair wasn't doing what I wanted it to do, my heels hurt, and I hovered near the refreshment table like I might disappear into it. Then Julian walked up and ruined my plan. "Please tell me you're standing here because the food is decent," he said, nodding at my plate, and not because someone said something painfully boring. I laughed before I could stop myself. It felt easy, disarming. That was Julian's gift. He made people feel chosen. We talked for over an hour. About work. About family. About how exhausting it was to constantly prove yourself in rooms not built for you. He told me about his business, his ambition, the pressure he carried to succeed. I told him about mine. He listened like it mattered. When he asked for my number, it wasn't slick or rehearsed. "I like how you think," he said simply. "I'd like to hear more of it." He called the next day. Not a text. A call. That alone felt significant. Julian showed up consistently in the beginning. Drove long distances without complaint. Planned dates. Remembered small things. He made me feel secure in a way I hadn't felt before. With him, there was no guessing game. No waiting by the phone. No wondering where I stood. I told Lena everything. She analyzed him like a detective, asking questions, replaying conversations, watching his body language when she finally met him. "He's confident," she said afterward, "but not arrogant. I like that for you." Her approval mattered more than I admitted. As the months passed, our lives blended smoothly. Julian started staying over more often when work pulled him closer to my place. Lena would drop by with food, and the three of us would sit around my small kitchen table, laughing, debating, teasing each other like family. Sometimes, Julian and Lena would team up against me in arguments, joking that I overthought everything. I laughed it off, even when it stung. I told myself it was harmless. Familiar. Just two people who loved me. My parents liked Julian. My mother appreciated his manners. My father respected how he spoke and carried himself. Even his mother, Marilyn, welcomed me warmly, often commenting on how grounded I seemed. Everything pointed forward. When Julian proposed 2 years later, it felt like the natural next step. He planned it carefully, intentionally, down to the music playing softly in the background. Lena was there, filming, crying, cheering louder than anyone. That night, after the excitement settled, I asked her, "You'll be my maid of honor, right?" She looked at me like I'd asked something ridiculous. "Always," she said without hesitation. At the time, I believed her. I didn't know that some promises are spoken easily because they've already been broken. Looking back, the warning signs were there. They just didn't arrive wearing red flags. They showed up dressed as comfort. Once Julian and I got engaged, the three of us became inseparable. Wedding planning has a way of pulling people into tight spaces, emotionally and physically, and Lena slid into the process like it was a role she'd been rehearsing for years. She made spreadsheets, built mood boards, scheduled calls. When work kept Julian busy, she stepped in without being asked. "I've got it," she'd say. "You focus on work. I'll keep things moving." It felt supportive, generous. I told myself I was lucky. Sometimes, though, I noticed how easily they communicated when I wasn't in the room. I'd come back from the bathroom to find them mid-conversation, voices dropping when they noticed me. Or I'd overhear them laughing about something I hadn't been part of, an inside joke I didn't recognize. "Nothing," Lena would say quickly. "Just wedding stress." Julian would smile and change the subject. I let it go. At vendor meetings, Lena often answered questions before I could. She knew the details. The budget. The timeline. Once, a florist glanced between us and asked, "So which one of you is the bride?" Lena laughed and pointed at me. Her. I'm just the bossy best friend. Everyone laughed. I laughed too. But my cheeks burned, and I couldn't explain why. There were quieter moments that unsettled me more. The way Julian trusted Lena's opinion without question. The way he'd look at her when she spoke, focused, engaged, like she had his full attention. The way she'd touch his arm when she emphasized a point, lingering just a second too long. Still, I told myself I was imagining things. One evening, while tasting cake samples at my apartment, I stepped into the bathroom to wash frosting off my hands. Through the half-closed door, I heard them talking. "She's going to panic about the budget," Julian said with a soft laugh. "She always does," Lena replied easily. "But she'll come around. She always does." "You really know her," he said, warmth unmistakable in his voice. There was a pause. Then Lena joked, "Somebody has to." When I came back into the room, they fell silent and smiled like nothing had happened. I told myself I was being sensitive, that I wanted them to get along, that this was better than tension or jealousy. The first real crack came during the final tasting at the estate. Julian and Lena debated menu options like an old married couple, leaning toward each other, voices animated, completely forgetting I was there. I said finally, trying to keep it light, "I'm the bride." They both turned toward me at the same time, startled. "Oh, right," Julian said quickly. "What do you think?" I said slowly, that I should have been asked first. The room laughed it off. So did I. But later that night, lying in bed and scrolling through photos of the three of us standing in front of the venue, something twisted in my chest. Julian's hand rested on my waist. Lena's arm was looped through his. We looked like a unit. And for the first time, I wondered where that left me. By the time the wedding weekend arrived, I had learned how to silence my instincts. Any flicker of doubt was quickly buried under logistics, excitement, and the constant reassurance that nothing was wrong. I told myself that stress made people strange. That closeness didn't automatically mean betrayal. That love, real love, was built on trust, not suspicion. So I trusted. The estate was stunning in the way only old money places are. Stone walls wrapped in ivy, towering trees that cast long shadows over rolling hills, and a gravel drive that made you feel like you were stepping into someone else's dream. My mother squeezed my hand as we pulled up. "This place looks expensive," she whispered. I laughed, but my chest swelled with pride. This was our beginning. We had rented the entire property for the weekend. Family filled the rooms quickly, laughter echoing through hallways that smelled faintly of polish and flowers. The East Wing belonged to my bridal party, already cluttered with garment bags and curling irons. The West Wing was reserved for Julian's family, with Marilyn's room at the very end of the upstairs hall. "So I can keep an eye on everyone," she joked when the rooms were assigned. The night before the wedding felt magical. Dinner was served outdoors under strings of warm lights. Music drifted softly through the air while cicadas hummed in the trees. I looked around the long table and felt overwhelmed by gratitude. Both families laughing together. Lena hovering close, refilling my glass, shooing away my worries. "Tomorrow is your day," she whispered, squeezing my shoulder. "Yours." Julian stood to give a short speech, thanking everyone for being there. When he talked about me, his voice softened, his eyes shining in the candlelight. People wiped away tears. I did too. If there was anything uneasy beneath the surface, I ignored it. Later that night, I passed the staircase and overheard Marilyn speaking quietly to Julian near the front door. "You sure you're ready for all this?" she asked. He laughed, but it sounded strained. "It's already done, Mom." "That's not what I meant," she replied. Someone called my name from outside, and I walked away before I could hear more. I told myself it was normal. Mothers worried. Weddings were overwhelming. When the house finally quieted, Lena and I sat on the edge of the bridal suite bed, legs swinging like teenagers. "Nervous?" she asked. "Terrified," I admitted. She smiled. "Good. That means it matters." A soft knock interrupted us. Marilyn stood in the doorway, pressing her fingers to her temple. "I've got a headache," she said. "I'm going to drive into town for my medication." I offered to go with her. She waved me off, insisting she'd be quick. I never heard her car leave. But I didn't think about that as I slipped into my satin nightwear and lay down, imagining the next day. The aisle. The vows. Julian's face when he saw me in white. For a few peaceful hours, I slept believing my life was exactly where it was supposed to be. I didn't know the house was already holding my ending. I woke before the sun. For a moment, I didn't know where I was. The ceiling above me was unfamiliar, too high, trimmed with old wooden beams. Then the weight of the day pressed down on my chest, and everything rushed back at once. My wedding. The house was still. No footsteps in the hall. No laughter. Just the distant creak of wood settling and the low hum of early morning air drifting through a cracked window. I lay there listening, my hand resting over my heart, waiting for excitement to bloom. Instead, unease stirred. I told myself it was nerves. Everyone said brides felt like this. A strange calm mixed with dread. A sense of standing on the edge of something enormous. I slipped out of bed and padded to the window. The estate looked different in the early light. Less magical. More watchful. Fog clung to the ground like it didn't want to leave, wrapping the trees in a pale gray haze. Somewhere below, a door creaked open and shut. Probably staff, I thought. Still, I checked my phone. No messages from Julian. That wasn't unusual. We'd agreed not to talk much the morning of the wedding. Superstition. Tradition. Something about preserving the moment. I showered slowly, letting the hot water calm me, rehearsing my vows in my head. By the time I wrapped myself in a robe, I felt steadier. Ready. Lena knocked lightly and let herself in, already dressed, hair half done. "Couldn't sleep?" she asked. "Not really." She smiled. "Good. Means you're human." As she helped me into the chair at the vanity, she chatted about the schedule. Hair in 30 minutes. Makeup right after. Photographer arriving by 8. Everything was timed perfectly. Too perfectly. "Has Julian been up?" I asked casually, watching her in the mirror. She hesitated. Just a fraction of a second. Enough that I noticed. "I think so," she said. "Probably with his groomsmen." Something tightened in my stomach. "What's wrong?" I asked. "Nothing," she replied too quickly. "Just, big day." There it was again. That subtle shift. The thing everyone seemed to be dancing around but never naming. Another knock came, sharper this time. One of the venue coordinators stood in the doorway, her expression carefully neutral. "Sorry to bother you," she said. "Have you seen Marilyn this morning?" I frowned. "No. She went out last night for medication." The coordinator nodded slowly. "Her car's still here." The room felt colder. "She may have returned late," I said, though I wasn't sure why I was defending her. "Yes," the woman replied. "Possibly." She left, closing the door gently behind her. Lena's hands had gone still. "Lena," I said softly. "What's going on?" She met my eyes in the mirror, and whatever she was about to say trembled on her lips before she swallowed it back. "Let's just get you ready," she said. Okay. That was when I knew. Not what was wrong. Just that something was. And that the house, quiet and patient, was finally preparing to tell me. The morning passed in a blur of brushes, pins, and whispered instructions. Lena guided me through every detail, her calm voice a lifeline as I struggled to focus. But my mind kept drifting to Marilyn. To that empty car. To the strange hesitation in Lena's eyes. By the time the photographer arrived, the estate had begun to feel unfamiliar, like I was walking through someone else's carefully staged world. The sunlight spilling across the gravel drive did nothing to warm it. It only highlighted how still everything was. Too still. Julian hadn't come by yet. Not unusual, again, I told myself. Groomsmen. Preparations. 1,000 minor details that would steal him away until the last possible moment. But still, my stomach churned. Lena finished pinning my hair, stepping back to inspect her work. "You look perfect," she said softly. "Everything will be perfect." I nodded, but I couldn't shake the sense that perfection had a price, and I was about to pay it. The bridesmaids were gathered, buzzing with excitement. Dresses swished across polished floors, laughter floated like music. And yet, behind it all, I could feel it, the faint, unnameable pull of danger, like a shadow hovering just beyond my sight. Then came a knock at the door, slow and deliberate. I turned. A servant held a small envelope, the edges crisp and unmarked. "For the bride," the servant said, voice tight, almost nervous. My hand trembled slightly as I took it. No name, no seal. Just a single line of handwriting. Some truths cannot wait for the vows. My chest tightened. I looked at Lena. She froze, eyes wide. "Open it," she whispered. I hesitated. Part of me wanted to tear it apart, part wanted to throw it away, and part, most dangerous of all, wanted to read it. Slowly, carefully, I unfolded the paper. The words inside were simple, devastating. "Julian is not who you think. He's hiding her. And she won't leave willingly." The world tilted. My hands shook so violently I had to grip the edge of the vanity. Who is she?" Lena's face drained of color. I can't." But I didn't wait. My mind raced back to the snippets I had overheard. Marilyn at the door. Julian's strained laugh. The small things I had buried under excitement and trust. Every instinct I had spent months silencing now screamed at me. Something was terribly wrong. And for the first time that weekend, I realized the house hadn't just been watching. It had been waiting. Waiting for me to see. Waiting for the chaos that would come when I finally did. The wedding day, the day I thought would be the happiest of my life, was already unraveling. And I had no idea how far it would go before it ended. The front doors opened with a soft chime, and my stomach clenched. Julian had arrived. At first glance, he was perfect, the tailored suit, the calm smile, the kind of confidence that made people forget everything else. But as he stepped closer, something in the set of his shoulders, the tension behind his eyes, made my chest tighten. He stopped just short of the bridal suite, his gaze sweeping over me with warmth and something else I couldn't name. "You're stunning," he said, voice low, almost private. "More than I ever imagined." I forced a smile, nodding, but my hands were still trembling from the envelope I'd hidden in the folds of my robe. I got a letter," I managed, my voice quiet. "From someone. Warning me. About you." Julian's expression flickered, just for a second. A shadow crossed his face, quickly replaced by practiced calm. "Warning you? About me?" His laugh was soft, easy, but it didn't reach his eyes. "Darling, whatever it was, it's a misunderstanding. You're letting nerves get to you. Weddings do that to people." I wanted to believe him. I wanted to cling to the trust one had spent so long cultivating. But something deep inside me refused. The instincts I'd silenced for months now screamed louder than ever. "Julian, what am I supposed to believe?" I asked, my voice trembling. "I heard you last night." "Marilyn. Something's wrong." He took a step closer, reaching for my hand. I didn't pull away, not immediately. But my eyes never left his face, searching for any sign of honesty. "It's nothing," he said softly, brushing a thumb along my knuckles. "Really? Don't let this ruin today. Please. I need you to trust me just today." Trust. The word landed like a stone in my chest. I wanted to. I wanted to believe it. But the envelope, Lena's hesitation, the strange shadows in this house, they all whispered otherwise. Before I could respond, Lena stepped forward, her voice steady but urgent. "You need to see this," she said, holding out her phone. She showed me a series of messages, screenshots of conversations I wasn't meant to see, Julian talking to someone clearly hidden, someone he referred to as her. Julian's jaw tightened. "Lena, give me that," he said, his calm slipping, a crack forming in the mask. "No," I said sharply, stepping between them. "I need to know. Who is she?" Julian's eyes darkened, and for the first time, I saw the man behind the charm, the one who could lie without blinking, who could twist truth into comfort. "She's complicated," he said finally, voice low, almost threatening. "But you don't need to worry about her. Today is about us." "No," I said, shaking my head. "I do need to worry. Because you're hiding her. And I will find out what you've done." The air between us tightened, charged. The quiet house, which had seemed almost serene that morning, now felt like a cage. Every creak of the floorboards, every whisper of wind outside, seemed magnified. Julian's hand twitched, almost imperceptibly, like he was debating whether to grab me or flee. "You're making a mistake," he said, voice low but dangerous. "This isn't what you think." I swallowed hard, gripping the envelope like a shield. My instincts screamed at me to run, to leave the estate, to escape before the day turned fully dark. But I didn't move. Because deep down, I already knew. Whatever secrets Julian held, and whatever darkness lurked in this house, my wedding day was no longer about vows. It was about survival. And for the first time, I realized I might not make it through. The front doors banged open again, startling me. A gust of wind followed, carrying the faint scent of exhaust and something metallic. Julian froze, eyes flicking toward the sound, his composure unraveling just enough to make me notice. I turned. The driveway was empty, except for Marilyn's car. The engine was off, headlights dark, doors locked. No sign of her. "She's gone," I whispered, the words slipping from my lips before I fully understood them. Julian's jaw clenched. "She must have left after taking her medicine," he said, too quickly, too perfectly. I didn't believe him. "No," I said, stepping toward him, voice rising. "I saw the car last night. It didn't leave. You know where she is." He took a step back, suddenly aware that I wasn't the frightened, trusting bride he had expected. This wasn't about charm or coaxing anymore. I was demanding truth. And I was no longer afraid. "It's complicated," he muttered, running a hand through his hair. His suit, so immaculate this morning, now looked constricting, like armor he couldn't escape. "You don't understand." "I want to understand," I said firmly, gripping the envelope tight. "Because whatever this is, it's already ruining today. You can't just pretend it's normal." Julian's eyes darted to the stairwell, then the hallway. "You don't know what you're doing," he said, voice trembling slightly. "If you go after her, after them, you'll ruin everything, including yourself." I felt my heart skip. His warning wasn't for the wedding. It wasn't for me. It was for someone else. "Who, Julian? Who are you hiding?" I demanded, my voice low but cutting. The room went silent. Lena, standing behind me, held my hand, steadying me. Even her presence couldn't mask the sense of danger settling like a weight over the suite. Finally, Julian's shoulders slumped. "You wouldn't understand even if I told you," he said, his voice almost pleading now. She isn't leaving willingly. And if you dig." "I will dig," I interrupted, cutting him off. "Because someone is trapped. And I'm not letting you control the truth anymore." His face darkened. The warmth I had once seen there, the gentleness I had clung to, had vanished. In its place was something sharp, predatory. A man who had built a world around deception and was now cornered. The sound of a door creaking from the east wing drew our attention. Julian's head snapped toward it. His composure cracked further, revealing panic he hadn't bothered hiding until now. "Go," he hissed. "Stay here. Just stay here, and you'll be safe." I shook my head. "I'm not leaving anyone behind. Not now. Not ever." He took a step toward me, hand raised as if to stop me, and I felt the house itself respond, shadows lengthening, the air thickening, a subtle vibration underfoot. It was as if the walls knew what was coming, as if they had been waiting for this confrontation all along. "I warned you," he said, voice low and dangerous. "Some truths aren't meant for weddings." But I was already moving toward the hallway, toward the east wing, toward the source of the secrets that had been hiding in the quiet corners of this estate. And with every step, the weight of the day pressed down harder, reminding me the wedding was over. This was survival. The hallway stretched before me, dim and silent, the polished floors reflecting the pale morning light. Each step echoed like a warning. I gripped the envelope tightly, Lena just behind me, her presence steady but tense. The east wing doors were closed. Each one, polished and unassuming, seemed to hide something enormous. My heartbeat thundered in my ears. The warnings, the strange tension, the letters, the silences, they all led here. I reached Marilyn's door. It was slightly ajar. A faint creak escaped as I pushed it open. The room was empty. No sign of the grandmotherly woman who had been a constant presence since Julian's childhood. But something on the floor caught my eye, her scarf, crumpled, and next to it, a small tablet screen flashing a paused video. I hesitated, then stepped closer. Lena's hand squeezed mine. The video began to play. Marilyn's voice, panicked, filled the room. "Julian, please, don't." The screen flickered, showing her in another part of the estate, tied to a chair, bruised, eyes wide with fear. And behind her, a shadowed figure, Julian, unmistakable, stood over her, expression dark and unreadable. I felt bile rise in my throat. "Lena, I couldn't finish." Lena's face drained. "We need to get her out. Now." I backed up, clutching the envelope as though it were a weapon. Every instinct screamed at me. This wasn't just a secret affair, a hidden lover, or a misunderstood warning. This was something far darker. Julian's voice, low and calm, echoed from the stairwell. "I warned you," he said again. "Some truths aren't meant to be uncovered." I turned. He was there at the top of the stairs, one hand resting lightly on the railing, watching. No panic, no fear, just an unsettling calm that made my skin crawl. "You won't take her," he said, almost conversationally. "Not today. Not anyone." I realized then that the house itself seemed to respond to his presence. Shadows stretched unnaturally along the walls, light flickered through the windows, and the air felt dense, almost oppressive. It was as if every corner of this estate had been complicit in hiding him and hiding her. Lena grabbed my arm. "We have to move. Fast." I nodded. My mind was spinning, trying to process everything. Julian had hidden her here, right under everyone's noses. The warnings, the whispers, the strange tension in the house, it all made sense now. And yet the most terrifying thought clawed at me. If Julian had trapped Marilyn, what else was he capable of? And if I wasn't careful, would I become his next secret? I steeled myself, gripping Lena's hand. "We're getting her out," I said, voice low but determined. No matter what. The calm before the storm was gone. The wedding was finished in name only. Now it was a race against a man who had already proven he would do anything to keep his secrets hidden. And I had just stepped into the dead center of them. I pressed myself against the wall, feeling the cool wood beneath my palm, every nerve alert. Lena's grip on my hand was tight, but not panicked, steady. Together, we edged toward the hallway, toward the door that led to the back of the estate. Every step was measured, careful, because we both knew Julian was watching, waiting for a misstep. The house felt alive. The walls creaked, the floors groaned under our weight, and shadows stretched and twisted unnaturally, as if they were extensions of his presence. It was almost suffocating, but I forced myself to breathe. Focused. Sharp. We reached the door at the far end of the hall. It led to the servants' wing and, hopefully, a route out. I tried the handle. Locked. "Of course," Lena muttered, her eyes scanning for another exit. "This whole place, it's a trap." A low, deliberate clap echoed from the top of the stairs. Julian's voice followed, smooth and mocking. "Impressive," he said. "You really think you can run from me?" I spun toward the sound. He was there, black suit perfectly fitted, eyes dark and cold, standing at the head of the staircase like a predator surveying prey. His posture was casual, almost relaxed, but every inch of him screamed danger. "Julian," I said, keeping my voice steady despite the fear twisting in my chest. "Let her go. Now." He tilted his head, a cruel smile touching his lips. "You think this is about her? It's never about just one person. You've been living in a fantasy, believing everything is perfect, that trust protects you. But trust is fragile." Lena's hand squeezed mine, urging me to keep moving. We edged toward another door, one that led to the service stairs. Julian's laughter followed us, soft, unnerving. "You really don't get it," he said. "Everything you see, this house, your wedding, your life, it's built on my control. And now you're trying to take that away." I ignored him, adrenaline pushing me forward. The door rattled under my grip, finally giving way. A narrow staircase spiraled downward, dim but visible. I could hear Marilyn's faint cries from somewhere below, muffled but unmistakable. Stay close, I whispered to Lena as we descended. The air grew colder, heavier, as we went down. The shadows seemed to stretch toward us, reaching, tugging at our sleeves, at our hair. My heart pounded in my chest, but I forced myself to focus. One step after another. The bottom of the stairs was just ahead. And then, a hand shot out from the darkness. Strong, fast. Julian. A hand shot out from the darkness. Strong, fast. Julian. I stumbled, barely catching myself, adrenaline surging. Lena pulled back, and I felt a shock of fear. I wasn't ready for him to be this close, this unrestrained. I told you, he said softly, almost like a promise, you're not walking out of here untouched. But we couldn't stop. Marilyn's voice called again, clearer now, desperate. That single sound made my legs move faster, my grip on Lena's hand tighter. We were running now, no longer careful. Every step echoed through the hidden corridors beneath the estate, a race through shadows, through fear, toward the truth that Julian had worked so hard to bury. And I realized with a cold certainty that the next few minutes would decide everything. Not just for me, not just for Marilyn, but for anyone who thought this wedding was a beginning. Because in Julian's world, beginnings and endings were the same thing. We stumbled into a dimly lit corridor, the walls narrowing as if the house itself were trying to trap us. Marilyn's cries were louder now, echoing from somewhere ahead, raw, terrified, pleading. My heart hammered so violently I was sure Julian would hear it from anywhere. Here, I whispered, pulling Lena toward a half-open door. The faint light inside revealed Marilyn, tied to a chair, her face streaked with tears, eyes wide and frantic. Marilyn, I called, running to her side. She flinched at my voice, then recognition flooded her features. Thank God, you came, she gasped. I hurried to untie her, hands shaking as I worked at the ropes. Lena moved quickly, checking the room for anything we could use as a weapon. The urgency was suffocating. Every second Julian didn't know exactly where we were felt like a reprieve we couldn't count on. Why are you doing this? Marilyn choked, voice breaking. I don't understand. He's controlling everything, I said quickly, glancing over my shoulder as shadows moved in the corridor outside. We have to get out now. A sudden sound froze us. Footsteps. Heavy, deliberate, coming down the hall. Julian. He's here, Lena whispered, pulling us toward the far door, the only way back toward the service stairs. Marilyn, still weak from fear, was leaning on me, but we managed to move, three of us together, hearts pounding in unison. We reached the door and yanked it open. The staircase descended into near darkness, but I could see the faint glow of the garden beyond. Freedom, or at least a chance at it, waited there. Then Julian appeared at the top of the stairs, calm, almost casual, but with a glint of menace in his eyes. You really think you can just walk away? He said softly, voice echoing in the narrow stairwell. Marilyn gasped and froze. I spun, stepping in front of her, the adrenaline pushing me past fear. Let her go, Julian, I said, voice firm, unwavering. It's over. His lips curved into a cold smile. Over? Oh no. You don't understand yet. This was never about her. Or even about you. It's about control. And I always win. I gritted my teeth. I couldn't argue, couldn't reason. Only act. No. I shouted, and we bolted, stumbling down the last steps, bursting into the cold morning air. The garden stretched before us, dewy grass brushing our ankles, and for the first time that morning, the sun seemed to promise something light, escape, survival. But Julian wasn't far behind. His shadow appeared at the top of the stairs, tall and imposing, a reminder that we were still prey in his world. We ran. Marilyn's weak steps slowed us. Lena stayed beside her, urging her forward. I felt every muscle in my body burn, every breath strain my lungs. But I didn't stop. I couldn't stop. Somewhere ahead, a service gate loomed, the edge of the estate. Freedom. Safety. And behind us, Julian's voice carried across the lawn, low and deadly. You think this ends today? I didn't look back. I couldn't. The only thing that mattered was getting Marilyn out alive. and surviving the man who had built a perfect life around lies, control, and fear. The garden stretched endlessly before us, dew soaking through the soles of our shoes. Marilyn's breaths were ragged, Lena's steady, but strained beside me. Every instinct screamed, "Don't stop, don't look back." And then we heard it, the crunch of shoes on gravel. "Julian. Faster," I hissed, clutching Marilyn's arm. We rounded a hedge, nearly tripping over the twisted roots that snaked across the path. The estate gates were just ahead, iron bars glinting in the early morning sun. Freedom. But Julian's shadow stretched across the lawn, tall and unyielding, blocking our escape. I skidded to a halt behind a fountain, heart hammering. Lena and Marilyn froze as well. Julian didn't rush. He didn't need to. His slow, measured steps were far more terrifying than a sprint. "You really thought you could run from me?" His voice carried easily across the open space, calm and deadly. "After all this, all the warnings, all the love you believed in?" I clenched my fists. "Let her go," I shouted. "It's over. You're done." He smiled, cold, cruel, like a man savoring a joke only he understood. "Done? No. Done is for people who obey rules. I don't." Lena stepped forward, blocking him instinctively. "You're not taking her again." Julian's eyes flicked to her, sharp and dangerous. "And what will you do? Stop me? You think you can fight me in my own house? My world." Something in his tone, confident, predatory, made me realize he had planned for this, every possibility, every escape. But I also realized he hadn't planned for desperation. For people who refused to submit. I grabbed a nearby wrought iron watering can and swung it at him instinctively. It connected with a sharp clang, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of surprise in his eyes. It was enough. "Go," I screamed at Marilyn. "Run." She bolted, Lena pushing her ahead, and I followed, keeping Julian distracted. He lunged, but I dodged, slamming a garden bench into the path to slow him down. The gates were within reach. Marilyn stumbled through first, breath ragged, and Lena slammed the latch behind her. Freedom was just a step away. Julian reached the gate at the same moment. He raised his hand, almost in disbelief, and I caught the raw, dangerous edge in his expression, the realization that control had slipped. "Go," I yelled, shoving Lena and Marilyn through the final barrier. The gates clanged shut behind them, a temporary barrier, but Julian didn't touch it. He stopped, staring at the locked iron, the sunlight striking his face and making the darkness behind his eyes all the more chilling. I took a deep, shuddering breath, chest heaving. Marilyn and Lena were safe for now. But as I turned to look back, I saw Julian standing there, tall, calm, watching us. Not angry, not panicked, just waiting. I realized then that escaping him today didn't mean victory. It meant survival. And that the nightmare, the control, the secrets, the lies, was far from over. The estate, silent and oppressive, seemed to hum around us as if it had absorbed everything that had happened and was already planning the next move. This wasn't just a wedding gone wrong. This was the beginning of a war. The garden was quiet now, the morning sun cutting through the mist like a promise, but the tension lingered. Marilyn and Lena clung to each other, shaking but alive, and for a brief moment, I allowed myself to breathe. Just a fraction. But Julian wasn't gone. Not really. From the gates, he watched us with that same cold, calculated calm. It was the look of a man who believed he could bend the world to his will. And for a terrifying second, I realized he might be right. He had built this estate, these walls, this weekend, to control everyone inside. Even now, outside the gates, he radiated authority. Lena touched my arm. "We need a plan," she said, voice low. "He's not leaving. And neither is he going to forget this." I nodded. "We lure him out. We confront him. But we do it smart." Marilyn's voice trembled. I can't. I'm weak. I can't face him." "Yes, you can," I said firmly, gripping her shoulders. "We've survived this far. You're stronger than he ever thought." The three of us retreated to the car, parked just outside the estate gates. The engine started, and I kept one eye on the looming shadows of the estate behind us. Julian hadn't moved. He didn't even flinch. He simply watched, a predator assessing his next strike. Driving down the gravel path, my mind raced. The warnings, the overheard conversations, the hidden threats, it was all part of a larger web. Julian's control wasn't just physical, it was psychological, meticulously woven over years. Escaping the estate was only step one. The real confrontation hadn't begun. We pulled over a short distance away, far enough to catch our breath, but close enough to plan. Lena and Marilyn huddled in the back, faces pale but determined. I kept the envelope hidden, knowing it held proof, evidence of Julian's secrets, of his lies, of his manipulation. "We need to draw him out," I said. "Make him think he's still in control. Then we act." Lena nodded. "And we make sure he can't hurt anyone else." Marilyn swallowed hard. "What if he fights back?" "We'll be ready," I said firmly. "We've already survived his games. Now we end them. Tonight." The estate loomed in the distance, silent, seemingly serene, but I knew better. Behind those ivy-covered walls, Julian waited. Patient. Dangerous. Calculating. And I knew, with icy certainty, that the confrontation ahead would change everything. Because this wasn't just about survival anymore. It was about justice. It was about finally exposing the man who had turned a wedding into a cage, a life into a nightmare, and so many secrets into weapons. And I wasn't going to let him win. Night had fallen by the time we returned to the estate, shadows stretching long and sinister across the gardens. The gates loomed ahead, dark and foreboding, but we didn't stop. Marilyn and Lena stayed close, their trust in me a fragile thread I couldn't afford to break. I parked a safe distance away and stepped out, letting the envelope, the proof of Julian's lies, rest in my coat pocket. Tonight, it wasn't just about escaping. It was about facing him, forcing him into the light, exposing everything he had hidden. The air was thick, almost alive, as we approached the main doors. The estate, so elegant and serene in daylight, now felt like a fortress of shadows. I could feel Julian's presence even before I saw him. "Come out," I called, voice steady. "We're done hiding. You can't control anyone here anymore." From the top of the grand staircase, his silhouette appeared, the dim chandelier catching the sharp angles of his face. Calm. Unmoved. Dangerous. "You think you can expose me?" His voice was low, almost amused. "After all this? You think you've won?" "I've survived your games," I said, stepping forward. "Now everyone else can see them too." Marilyn's weak voice came from behind me, but she was standing, finally finding courage. "You can't keep hiding anymore, Julian. We know." His eyes flicked to her, then to Lena, then back to me. The amusement in his face vanished, replaced by something darker, something almost animal. "You really believe a letter and a few whispers are enough to ruin me," he said. "I've built this world carefully. Every lie, every secret, every person. I control." I felt Lena's hand tighten on mine. "Not anymore," she said. "We've seen the truth." I drew the envelope from my coat, holding it up. "Proof. Every secret you've buried, every manipulation. It's all here." Julian's eyes narrowed, calculating. He took a step down the staircase, slow, deliberate. "You think this changes anything? You think you've won because you have paper? Evidence? You underestimate me." I stood my ground. "No, I don't underestimate you. I'm facing you. And that's what matters." He stopped, just a few feet away now. Silence hung thick, broken only by our shallow breaths. Then he smiled, sharp and cold. "Very well," he said. "Then let's see if your courage is enough to survive the night." And with that, the calm, controlled predator I had feared all weekend became fully real. The estate, silent and watchful, seemed to lean in, ready to witness the confrontation it had been holding back for months. Tonight, secrets would be revealed. Truths would be forced into the open. And only one of us would leave the house unchanged. The silence stretched, tense and suffocating, broken only by the soft rustle of our footsteps on the marble floor. Julian's presence filled the room like a storm gathering in the distance. Every instinct screamed that this wasn't a negotiation, it was a test of survival. "You've underestimated me," he said, Voice smooth, controlled, but with an edge that made the hairs on my arms stand on end. Do you even know why Marilyn is here? Or why this wedding mattered? I swallowed hard. Yes, you wanted control. Over her. Over me. Over everyone. His smile was cruel, almost theatrical. Over everything. But control isn't just about force. It's about fear, manipulation, belief. And you believed in me. Marilyn's cries caught in her throat. I didn't, she stammered. You did, Julian interrupted, stepping closer. Even in your fear, you obeyed. And that obedience, your trust, made this world possible. You, all of you, made me untouchable. I stepped forward, heart hammering. No more. It ends tonight. Julian's eyes flicked to the envelope in my hand. Proof. Documents. Evidence. You think exposing me will change anything? It will, I said, voice stronger than I felt. Because the truth always wins. People can't hide behind fear forever. He laughed, a low, chilling sound. The truth? The truth is relative. You think a few papers, a few screenshots, can undo years of planning? You have no idea what you're dealing with. And then, finally, he revealed it. The part one had feared, the secret that had been hinted at but never fully exposed. Marilyn had not just been trapped. She had been blackmailed, manipulated into silence for decades. Julian's control extended far beyond this wedding weekend. He had orchestrated her life, shaped her decisions, ensured she would never escape without consequences. Her eyes widened in horror. No, you can't. Yes, he said, cutting her off. I can. And I did. But I didn't falter. Holding the envelope high, I forced him to look at it. You lied to everyone. You controlled everyone. But no more. Every secret, every manipulation is documented. And now, the world will know. His face darkened, fury replacing the calm predator. He lunged, swift and desperate, aiming to grab the envelope. But Lena stepped in, throwing herself in his path. He staggered back slightly, and in that instant, I seized the chance. Marilyn, trembling but determined, pulled herself free from the ropes that had bound her earlier. The three of us moved together, a silent, determined unit, forcing Julian back toward the staircase. You're done, I said, voice low but unwavering. No more lies. No more control. Not today. Not ever. Julian's eyes burned with a mixture of anger and disbelief. He was not in control. And in that moment, the house itself seemed to shudder as if acknowledging the shift. The predator had been cornered. The truth had found its mark. But the night was far from over. Julian's obsession was not so easily broken. And I knew, deep in my bones, that surviving this confrontation meant more than escaping the estate. It meant finally breaking the hold he had on everyone, once and for all. The house felt different now, heavy with silence, but also with release. Julian stood at the top of the staircase, fury etched into every line of his face, but the moment of dominance he had relied on for years had vanished. For the first time, he was vulnerable. I held the envelope tightly, proof in hand, a tangible reminder that his secrets could no longer control anyone. Marilyn and Lena flanked me, both wary but resolute. Together, we represented the end of his reign. You've lost, I said firmly. Not because of strength or speed or fear, but because truth always wins. Julian's jaw tightened. You think this changes anything? He hissed. I am untouchable. You're not, I replied. Not anymore. We've seen everything. Everyone will know everything. And you can't stop it. He froze, realizing for the first time that control had slipped from his hands. His gaze flicked to Marilyn, then to Lena, then back to me. Anger, panic, disbelief, all mingled in a storm behind his eyes. And then, slowly, deliberately, he stepped back. Go, I said, voice low but commanding. Leave this house. Leave us. And never come back. For a long moment, he didn't move. And then, finally, he turned, his figure receding into the shadows of the estate. The doors closed behind him with a heavy, final thud. Marilyn sank to the floor, trembling, but I helped her up. It's over, I whispered. You're safe. Now. Lena wrapped her arms around both of us. "We did it," she said softly. "We actually did it." Outside, the estate seemed lighter, the oppressive weight that had clung to every corner lifted. Stone walls and ivy remained, but they no longer felt threatening, they were just part of the past now. We stood together on the gravel drive, watching the sunrise paint the horizon in gold. The world felt vast, open, full of possibility. For the first time in days, maybe months, we could breathe without fear. Marilyn looked at me, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," she said, voice shaking. "I didn't think anyone could save me." "You saved yourself," I replied. "We just helped." And in that moment, I understood something profound. The house had held secrets, hidden dangers, and fear, but it had also been a witness. A witness to courage, truth, and survival. The wedding weekend, the place I had imagined as a beginning, had almost been my end. But standing there, with Marilyn and Lena, I realized that endings are only the start of something new. The estate receded behind us as we drove away, shadows shrinking in the morning light. Julian's control was gone, his secrets exposed, and the life I thought would be lost was finally mine to live. We were free. And nothing, not fear, not manipulation, not hidden lies, would ever take that from us again.